Calling into order the Brattleboro Town School Board, May 8th, 2019, at 5 p.m. And for everyone's information, people will be in and out tonight. There's a presentation at the library on compassion in the schools, so people going to, which is terrific. And the board is going to be in and out as well, because we have to have a brief executive session right now. So it will be brief. So I move that we enter into executive session to discuss the academic records of the student, where the board has determined that premature general public knowledge would clearly place the district or people involved at a substantial disadvantage. Invited into the executive session are the superintendent, the curriculum coordinator, and the parents. Back, we rise from executive session at 5:17, and I ask for a motion to accept the staff's recommendation regarding early entry.
So moved.
Okay, a second?
We need a second.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, passed 4-0. So, we're going to make a couple of changes. Well, first, I'd like to point out to our audience that there are some materials related to the later agenda item on the fund balance, reserve fund balance, and also the timeline for the Act 46 merger process, which is kind of complicated. So it's good to have a graphic of how it's going to work.
Can you speak loud?
Yes, I can. If anyone that wishes to speak during the meeting, please come to the microphone. Or no, you'll find them and we'll ask for their name and the town they're from. So do we have any, next item is recognition of groups and or individual visitors. Is there anyone that would like to speak to anything that's not on our agenda this evening? Hi, would you please say your name and your town?
My name is Mary Stowe. I live in Brattleboro, and I've just become, in the last several weeks, very concerned about the amount of electromagnetic radiation that we are all exposed to. There was that little thing on DPR yesterday about 5G.
I asked if you could speak up, please.
Oh, sorry. And I've been on the river all day, and I forgot to put my hearing aids back in when I came here. But so I'm just concerned about. My question to all of you who work so hard for all of our children is just: is there an awareness of the possible risk of having a lot of Wi-Fi in all the classrooms, of the electromagnetic radiation that the children are exposed to all the time in the classroom, because it's not coming in on cables, it's coming in through Wi-Fi. That's basically my question, if there's an awareness of that in the schools and in the school.
David, could I comment?
Sure, yes. Just typically, we don't respond to everything because it's, not an agenda item. If we want to take that up later in the agenda.
Well, I did want to say
we certainly can.
that there was a story on VPR and connected with the rolling out of the 5G network. And I think it is something that we should do a little self-education on, because it is an issue that's being discussed more widely, and it seems to be coming along rather quickly, spurred upon by the speed of technological introduction and innovation. And it might be something that some of us on the board might do some self-education on, and maybe even report back to the board.
Yeah. There's also a couple of weeks ago on Science Friday, there was a program about that very topic, which we could forward to the board members, and we could see if we really want to talk about it.
There's an article to an Ed Gadfly that I can forward to you to forward along.
So thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
So any other comments in the public on the agenda? Then we move to the consent agenda, the approval of warrants and the minutes of April 3rd and April 17th. I have a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. Any conversation, any questions or changes to the minutes? The warrants, I believe, are here. They'll work their way across the table.
Yep.
Okay, hearing none, all those in favor of accepting the clerk's report, please say aye.
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 Opposed? And we have accepted the clerk's report. The committee reports, I don't believe we have any. Is there, Robin, is there a diversity committee report?
Well, we had an
Yeah.
additional meeting to prepare for Diversity Day, and then we had our event, and it was a pretty good success, despite the fact that it started raining halfway through, because we had this year secured an indoor location as part of the event anyway. It was pretty easy to just move the party indoors, but we had some great performances kicked off by our own Andy Davis at the Maypole, and we had a bunch of community groups and musicians, dancers that played at it. We had several community partners doing activities and booths, and then we had a really terrific display of student work down at 118 Elliott, along with some storytelling and crafts. So it was I thought it was a really successful event, and we're looking forward to what we're going to do next year.
I could report on the Policy Council Early Childhood Education.
That's under, we do that under administrative reports.
Okay,
Great,
all right.
thank you.
It's just listed down here as a committee report, that's why I brought it up. Bottom of page 1, that's why.
It is, it's the first thing. Is that how we typically do that?
Quite often.
Okay, well, let's do that, Andy.
All right. So last month, on the 24th, there was a meeting at the Bird Street Early Childhood Center, and meeting was chaired by Deb Gass here. And the first top, well, a lot of the, I'll just summarize. The general tenor of the meeting was the challenges faced by our early childhood educators. A big part of the meeting was to discuss and try to clarify the policy on when children can be sent home, because early childhood care is such an important economic factor in parents' lives, and it's important to have a very consistent policy when a child is asked to go home. It's probably an issue in the elementary schools as well. But it's hard because some families, that's an incredible challenge for them to get a call in the middle of the day from an economic point of view, a work point of view. So that was one issue. There were a number of positions open in early childhood education, and the challenges of filling those positions with the resources and the wages that we offer to early childhood educators was discussed quite a lot. There is some very active parent support in the early childhood system in our area. I was incredibly impressed by the collaboration between staff and parents in providing the programs that we provide. So if anyone wants to talk to me later about it, Deb, is there something you want to add to that?
No, I would just say, just an example of the collaboration was that we were looking at a potential challenge, an issue that we may need to close one of our Westminster classrooms again because we're low on staff. And so the education and health managers were present at the meeting to really brainstorm with the parents what that might look like. And many of the parents who attended were from the Westminster site, so it was definitely a hot topic, and I think we came out of that session with some collaborative plans. Fortunately, we were able to hire, and we have a couple more folks to hire at our next meeting, which will be a joint meeting, so you'll be able to witness that. And hopefully with those hirings, we won't need to put the plan into place.
Yeah.
It certainly was a very productive meeting on that issue.
And there were some very good candidates that came forward to fill those positions, and those positions have been, 2 of them have been filled. So I think that's enough of an overview. We have a lot of things to cover, but
Thank you. Debbie, anything else to add to the DES report?
Do you want me to go into the administrative report?
No.
Okay, no, I think we're good.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so we're going to go to administrative reports. And Tracy has to leave early, as does Lyle. They're participating in the, and Jared, and John. They are participating in the Compassion in the Schools, which is probably why we don't have a lot more people, because they're all at the library waiting for them to show up. So I'll let you introduce yourself and the program.
Sure. My name's Tracy Benatarian. I'm the school counselor at Green Street School, but I'm not here as a school counselor. I'm actually here as the Destination Imagination coordinator for our school. We've had Destination Imagination in our school for 5 years now. We have kids who start in kindergarten, and hopefully they'll do it all the way through 6th grade. This past year, we went to the state tournament up in Burlington. We brought 2 competitive teams. One team got 3rd place, and our other team got 1st place. And so they are eligible to go to Globals. And Globals happens down in Kansas City, Missouri. And we have been working to figure out funding to go to Globals, and we've done a great job with the help of Mark Spino and Frank Rucker, and I'm here to request a little bit more money. We are taking 5 kids, 5 families, and we're going to be there for 3 days. And it's a really exciting experience for kids. It definitely takes kids who have maybe been centered in Brattleboro and shows them that their world is a lot larger, and they get to work with kids from all over the world. I have a brief video that Jerry worked really hard to get set up for me, so I would like to show it if possible. Let's hope all the technology works. But it gives you an idea about Globals and the opportunities for our kids.
On May 22nd, we'll kick off Destination Imagination Global Finals 2019 in Kansas City, Missouri, celebrating creativity, teamwork, and our future innovators. Here's a sneak peek at what you can expect. Celebration of creativity. We'll see you in Kansas City, Missouri.
It was brief, I know. Sorry. It was really splashy and flashy. So, at any rate, we have, our team has been together for 4 years. We did the Monster Effects Challenge, which is an engineering challenge. So I had 5 kids work collaboratively since October to build a structure. The structure could only weigh 175 grams, which is not much. And it had to be between 9.5 and I believe 11.5 inches high. And they could only use 7 different materials. And it was wood, wire, electrical tape, and maple syrup tubing was how they built this structure. The best thing about Destination Imagination is that there is adult supervision, there is adult cheerleading, but that's it. And they really don't want to hear any of my ideas, and they're super clear about that. And it's probably a good thing, because their ideas are really much better than mine. And so they built this all on their own. And when we got to the tournament, we had no idea how much it was going to hold, because we don't have, they put the weights, you know, when you're doing the Olympic weightlifting, it's the big heavy metal weights. We don't have those at Green Street. So we never actually got to test it. So we were just kind of going in blind. And, you know, I just kind of let these kids do their thing, because they're pretty amazing. And so we won because we held 365 pounds. And so the kids were really impressed. And not only did we win because we held 365 pounds, we also got a Renaissance Award, which is a big deal. And it was because the kids write their own script, And their script is hilarious, and it incorporates all sorts of elements about engineering. They were talking on Tuesday yesterday in my office. Mark comes in to check in, and we're having a conversation about hydraulics. And this is, you know, fourth graders. So it's pretty exciting what these kids, first of all, are capable of. I'm always impressed by them. But it's also really exciting to have them have the opportunity to go learn. When my daughter went, when she was in fourth grade actually, the amount of information that she got about engineering, about science, about technology, just learning from people from China, from, you know, Japan, all the things, watching their challenges, going into the prop room, watching them recycle materials to create props, to create scenery. It's absolutely nothing that we can duplicate. I mean, we're a great school system. So, but it's really an amazing challenge, and so that's my presentation. And we would like just a little bit more funding to get there. We're almost there. We're actually going.
What is the total cost, and how much have you raised so far?
We, it's about 11,000, and we have 10,000. So we just need 1,000 more. We are committed to do 3 additional fundraisers starting in the fall. What was really tricky is this group of parents that do Destination Imagination are really involved with the school on a lot of different levels. And so they were already planning the tulip drop, and that happened last Saturday, which was an amazing success. So I know I've got the best team on my side. And so we didn't want to do a fundraiser that would conflict with the tulip drop, because that raises money for the whole school, and so we really had some conflicting conversation about that. But this is how great these parents are. We were at DI, and if you posted Destination Imagination, the tournament up in Burlington, and if you posted a lot of pictures on social media, and if they were able to flag those pictures, you would win a pair of earbuds, I think is what they're called. And so that's what our families did, and of course we brought home a pair of earbuds, because they were that diligent about posting things about Green Street on social media on the DI page. So it's a great group of individuals. I have a feeling that we'll be able to pull off 3 fundraisers, fall and winter, so that we are at least raising money to continue this program. And they give us tons of fundraising ideas whenever you make it to Global. I have a 10-page packet on ways to make money, and so I know we're all motivated to do it.
So we're wondering if the board would consider $1,000 contribution towards the trip, and possibly that could be an endowment topic. Like Tracy said, we figured out 10,000 out of the 11,000. 5,000 coming from PTO fundraising funds, and then about 5,000 coming from a student activities account that wasn't used this summer that Frank identified for us. So we're about $1,000 away.
And we got some financial aid, and we have a donation.
We applied for some financial aid.
Yeah.
We got about $700
Yeah.
worth of financial aid.
We haven't had a financial update recently. The last one indicated there were no particular surprises, and that we're likely to have a small balance at the end of the year. So, what's the pleasure?
I move we authorize spending $1,000 for the Destination Imagination. Did I say that correctly?
Yeah.
Okay.
Destination Imagination. It used to be Odyssey of the Mind, and the Odyssey of the Mind and Destination Imagination merged a few years back in Vermont.
So I move we do that.
Just a quick question. Is
Second.
this,
We need
a
to second before
first,
we
yes.
discuss.
You have a second,
Okay.
thank you. Andy, go ahead.
is this something that is available only at Green Street School because of staff leadership and interest there, or is it something that potentially could be spread to the other
Yes, any school
schools?
can do it. They do it all over the world. So if there's an interest in another school, of course, and of course I would support anyone doing this. I'm a huge fan of DI. I totally geek out at it all the time. I think it's one of the best problem-solving, creative thinking programs for kids that we can provide. So yes, if another school wanted to get involved in it, I think it's a wonderful program.
Andy, I know just for background, I know Jack at least did Odyssey of the Mind when he was at Academy School. So it's something,
Jack McKinnon.
my youngest
your
son.
son, your son.
My
yeah.
son.
It's through the after-school program,
Yes.
so I think it just depends on having one of the people that's staffing an after-school activity being like, I'm gonna do Destination Imagination, so.
It's not a light commitment, it's a pretty intense
Yes.
commitment, but it's worth it. Yeah, yeah.
Any other conversation about the motion? Yep,
Can I just
Bonnie?
ask, Mark, when you mentioned that you were hoping it could be part of the endowment, could you explain a little bit more what you meant by that?
Well, not part of the endowment, if we could access part of the endowment for the
Oh, use the
$1,000 donation.
Brattleboro school endowment
Yeah.
money for that activity. And does that, does this align with what the legal designation of it is?
We'd have to explore that, and I think there's something of a time crunch.
Yeah.
in this
Okay,
case.
so that's just a suggestion of one place to look for the money,
Yeah.
but we don't have to say that in this motion.
No.
We can just give money and then we'll figure out which account from later.
So we have a motion to approve $1,000 to complete the fundraiser for Destination Imagination. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We have approved.
Thank you. Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Sounds awesome.
Thank you, Jen. I think you did.
Mark,
I want to go to that. That video looks so exciting. I want to go.
I know.
I was shocked by the flatness.
Thank you.
Whether we
I've never
Flying
been,
bigger
so yes,
Yeah, it's amazing. Mark, you want to continue
Yeah,
with
sure.
Green Street?
Just to follow up with DI, it was really cute when the kids, after that weekend that they came in first place, they didn't think that they would be able to go to Globals. And our first response was, why not? Let's figure out a way. And so they feel really supported and special as we kind of figured this out for them. So thank you for that support. I think you have my report. They were passed around. Really lots to report on. I'm going to try to keep it brief. On that front page, you guys have it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm missing a copy, I think, but we'll share.
Under student programming, a couple of things I want to point out. On April 30th, there was a chorus festival, Supervisory Union Chorus Festival. We participated this year. We had a chorus of 40 students. It's really big, very popular. It's the first year we've participated in this event, and it was a blast. Very similar to the band night that is held in the winter. Kids did a really nice job, and just wanted to, emphasize how nice that evening was. This year will be the second year in a row that we're going to take some sixth graders to Magog, Canada. That trip is scheduled for May 10th, so coming up. So like last year, sixth graders will go to Canada and they'll experience a day speaking French and learning about the culture in Magog. So that's exciting. A tradition that was started last year by Alice Sharks, and we're continuing it this year as a positive experience for kids. Flipping to the back side, you can see there's just so many community events that we've had and so many field trips that are up and coming. I'd like to focus on May 2nd. We had our arts night. This year we did it a little different. The focus was the visual arts program at the school. We have so many ways to celebrate our music programs, and there's so many performances throughout the year. We felt like we wanted to try something different and really focus on the visual arts. So we turned the school into a museum and had a really nice gallery walk on May 2nd. The school was really transformed. We had cheese and crackers available, music in the background in the hallways, so it really had a feel of like being in a museum. I was worried we would get some negative response to the change. We didn't. Parents seemed to really love the change. So that was nice, and it was nice to be able to highlight Rachel Mangine's work. At the very bottom, you can see some things I'd like to highlight. That second box, there's a program called Vocabulary, which is a national, actually a world program. Ms. Shannon, our librarian, does it once a week with our kids. There was a challenge to students about to tell us about your favorite dinosaur. So we had about 55 students partake in that challenge. They submitted their work, and lo and behold, we get a phone call and an email that Green Street was going to be featured in the next vocabulary preview. So 55 of our kids are on this worldwide app, dancing and singing for other schools who are participating with vocabulary. So that was really neat. It was not expected to be chosen, but the kids were super excited. They got to see themselves on TV. The very bottom, we have another really nice opportunity. The New York Times was in contact with us over the April break, and apparently every month they do a kids edition, and we're going to be able to participate in that. So the New York Times will be with us on May 13th, which is Monday. An editor and a photographer will come to the school. They'll interview all of our fourth graders, run a writing workshop, and then publish all the students' pieces in the New York Times. So, pretty excited about that. Next year, a focus of our PD is on writing, so this is a really nice springboard for that work. And then lastly, our school library programming is going to be much different next year. And I have some PowerPoint copies for board members. But essentially, we're going to be offering library twice a week rather than just once a week, which we always have. And the library classes are going to have, one of the library classes will have a focus on research skills, writing, and presentation tools connected to social studies and science content. And then the additional library class will be a STEAM-centered class. So science, technology, engineering, art, and mathematics focus. Both classes will be connected to the next generation science standards, as well as the social studies standards. So this is a presentation that Ms. Shannon, our librarian, presented to the staff. It was overwhelmingly supported by everybody. It's a total change in how to go about utilizing the library class. And I'm sure at some point next year, we would want the opportunity to present to the school board how things are going and how that's looking. But I think it's a really transformational idea of what elementary school library can look like. So that's that.
Do the kids, they have library once a week now?
Yeah.
Okay. But the same person, Shannon, would be doing the program for STEAM?
Yeah, and then the STEAM, she would actually be co-teaching that with our technology integration teacher. So it'd be a co-taught class.
I think it's a great integration to get kids ready for STEM programs once they get towards the high school.
Yeah. And we do a lot of STEM programs in our after-school program, and they're widely successful. Tons of kids sign up for them. So this is going to be, I think, really engaging exchange for the class, for the school.
Yeah, George, yes.
George Trevor, West Brattleboro. Mark, do you know when the Times is going to publish? Or is it not set yet?
I don't know what the actual date for the publish is.
I'd just like to suggest that get out in advance so people who'd want to get a hold of a copy that they could get a hold of a copy.
Yeah, definitely. I've seen samples of what they've done with other schools. It's really impressive. So looking forward to that opportunity. Maybe we can have an article in the Reformer highlighting.
We do a Reformer report.
Jerry, would you like to go next?
Sure. Let's see if I can find that. This is here. So, just give a shout out, not just because I have some PTO members here, but definitely PTO at Oak Grove has been very, very busy. It's been a very busy May. They had, or April, and even continuing into May. They had their spring dance, which brings in, it's open to anyone. They don't charge admission, but it's a great family event. Kids are a little crazy sometimes for my liking, but at the same time, it's a lot of fun. So have families and gather, and it's just great. Then they, just last weekend, they had on Saturday night, they do their outdoor movie night. That's become kind of an annual tradition. And they have a big blow-up outdoor screen, and families come and they serve hot dogs and do you serve hamburgers? There's a lot of food, a lot of kids play, and then they bring blankets. And I know this last weekend it was chilly, so they had blankets and chairs, and watched the Lego 2 movie, I believe is the one that they watched. So again, it's a great, it takes a lot of organization to pull those events off. They were like back to back, but it was a lot of fun. The other piece that I mentioned last time a little bit was our playground committee. That also has been involving a lot of parents. And the work that I mentioned last time is to think about having more like a vision, like a master plan of future development of our playground. So we have hired design services from a woman by the name of Nancy Staninsky, I think is how you pronounce her name. I apologize, Nancy, if you're watching. She probably isn't, but she runs a corporation called Early Space. And she was just here last Wednesday as part of her first, we did Skype walk around through the yard with her. Patrick Kitzmiller, who is an architect and also a parent, was kind enough volunteer. He did these amazing drawings, and so I'm just going to hold this up. Right now it has a lot of, so really all the coloring and everything is just our backyard the way it is right now. So when Nancy was here last Wednesday, we had some parents, we had representatives of teachers and paraeducators who are on the playground every day. She held a design charrette, is what she refers to, and they basically for 2 hours talked about what's the vision, what do kids do, what do we like about the space, what do we see would be helpful improvements for the space, and so she just kind of walked us through that. There was parent surveys and staff surveys, so that if they couldn't be at the design meeting that afternoon, then she could at least capture some of their ideas in a survey. So right now, Nancy is back in Virginia, and she has taken our plans, all the different ideas that came from that afternoon, and we're now kind of waiting for 3 different phases with her work. Design checklist that she'll send to us, and that will kind of like, are there things that are missing here that you still want me to kind of incorporate? And then there'll be like a preliminary design, and then it will be kind of a final design. And again, that is, again, to give us an overview of this master plan, if you will, for our playground, with the hopes and the intention that the next few years that the board, or that our budget will be able to reflect having money to go into phasing these improvements over the next few years. So some of it is expanding our garden, along with Food Connects and our Farm to School, and our grants that we get from that to help expand our garden, and other type of grants. We also do parent weekend work days, so that will help looking at the master plan, saying, okay, what are we skilled at doing in terms of the parents? What can we do? What can we start working on and building? So it's pretty exciting for Oak Grove. I hope that they'll call me if they need some, heavy lifting on the weekends to come and help. I certainly will do that, and so I'm really excited for them and for the work. So it was really reaching out to parents and then, kind of help allowing and having the parents work with me to move it into more of a professional design stage. I'm really excited about that. Any questions about that? Yes.
If any of this spills over into the early childhood classroom, we can use Head Start funding for some of this.
Oh. Did you hear that? Head Start funding, very good. Because we did talk a little bit. We talked a lot about, her design is around like early space, creative play spaces, how to bring the students from inside and outside. And again, in talking to teachers is also to think about, we don't have woods. We're not like, it'd be great if we could have an outdoor classroom, a wooded outdoor classroom like Academy, but we're not going to have that.
You're here.
But we can still create an area that really allows kids to explore in a natural space. And from younger kids all the way up to older kids in 6th grade. So definitely pre-K and funding from Head Start. I will definitely make sure everybody knows that, right? Yeah, that's great. So there are just some other programming things that have been going on. Disc golf has started. That's one of our new after-school programs. Eric Tuma received a $500 Blue Cross Blue Shield of Vermont grant for $500. So he has these really cool discs, and he has a nice group of students who are playing after school. And I don't know if the actual, I don't know, I haven't watched him yet, but I will get out there and try to get out there and watch him play. But that's coming from a grant, so he's pretty excited about that. And yeah, we have a family picnic coming up. May is just, May, June is just really, really busy, and my report doesn't even capture everything that we have going on. So don't have time to write it all down.
Speaking of really busy, John has to be out of here in a couple of minutes.
Yep. Sorry, John.
I know we've got some positions that we can approve with Juliana.
We do.
If you want to fill in some other, if you want to fill in anything we might need to know.
I'll take the time to go through our whole report. I'd love to start by sharing a couple examples of some student work. All three Brattleboro Town Elementary Schools just concluded the Maple Leaf Writing Contest, which is something that happens every year between all three elementary schools. I think this year there were about 32 students between the three schools that have spent the year writing a book that from idea generation all the way through to publication. Pretty consistent check-ins with staff. At Academy, we're thrilled to have 15 students go through that process from beginning to end. And it is also a contest, and there are winners identified for both the content of the story and for the artwork involved in the story. And among our 15 students who completed the process, we had 2 students who received awards for their stories. We had Uma Shupak, a 6th grade student, who was awarded 2nd place for her story, and Nina North was awarded 1st place for her story. And I've shared both of those stories with you to look at. In addition, a 6th grade student, Wesley Shupak, was awarded 1st place for his illustration of his book, and so you have his story as well. And it's truly a remarkable project for students. It's really a long-term thing, and it's neat to see the finished product of the books on display at our school, which is quite an accomplishment.
It's a lot of work.
It's an immense amount of work for these students.
It's months of work.
Yeah. It's quite an accomplishment. So please take a look. Those are photocopies. The finished product is bound and looks very professional. just want to share that. So I'll go through our report, and then as David mentioned, I have 4 new hires to present to the board. But just picking out some highlighted information from our report. I wanted to give an update on our Family Engagement and Education Coordinator and HCRS clinician caseload. As you can see there, about 25% of our student body is now accessing those 2 people within our building. And that is, we had 26 families who regularly access our Family Engagement and Education Coordinator, who is a social worker. Jody Mutolki is her name. Was proven to be a very well utilized asset within our school community. And there's some examples of what she does listed there. And our HCRS clinician currently works with 45 students in our building, which is again, a very well utilized resource that I wanted to highlight. In the past month, we have gained 3 students at Academy. We have 2 new kindergartners. One moved in from out of district, and one has moved in from out of the country, which is exciting. And we have a new first grader who moved in at the end of April, also from out of district. And we've had 2 students move from Academy, as you see. One out of district and one to another school within the district in another town. Flipping to the back page, you'll see a list like Green Street and Oak Grove. We have our after-school programs are in full swing right now. Particular highlight new this year is utilizing our woods and our natural playground areas in after-school clubs. We have a Naturalist and Wilderness Club run by a couple teachers. We have an Outdoor Adventure Club for younger students, in addition to, as we've mentioned in the previous meetings, Card Club, which was a student initiative that they began and are running with some teacher supervision. Chess Club, strings, culture, and all those things listed there. Let's see, in terms of school-wide events, like Green Street and Oak Grove, there's many to mention. Highlight a couple for me is that we hosted our annual variety show, which is a highlight of the year for many of us. It's an opportunity for students with a variety of things that they'd like to share with our community. And so it was about an hour-long show of dancing and singing and juggling and comedy and a wide range of things that is for me, I love the opportunity to see kids, students in their element, sort of sharing their skills with our communities. We hosted our 2nd annual First Responders Breakfast on April 25th, where we invited members from Rescue, the Fire Department, State Police, Brattleboro Town Police. We had about 25 first responders come and have breakfast with our students from grades kindergarten and 1st grade. Chance for students to connect with them and ask about what they do in our community and get to know some of the first responders. It was nice. In addition, we hosted our English as a second or other language night on May 2nd, which is a pretty remarkable night that we host. Our English as a second or other language department has students create an arcade games out of cardboard boxes and other things. So you need to have students create these games and then lead their families and teachers and principals through these games, and it's a potluck dinner, and it's really a remarkable event that has become a highlight. We had about 20 families there, so roughly 60 to 70 people come for this potluck dinner. It was really a great event. We have, this time of year, we work very closely with BEAC, the Bonneville Environmental Education Center. And so almost daily, we are sending classes to BEAC, and then BEAC comes to us, and they work within our forest, building structures and doing sort of hands-on engaging learning within our grounds, as well as us going to BEAC. So that partnership has really become quite strong this year, and it's proved to be a really meaningful hands-on learning opportunity for our students that we're very proud of. Let's see, next week brings our SBAC testing, which will be going on for 3 days a week for the next 2 weeks in our school. A couple other things. We had our new kindergarten parent visit on April 26th, which was a new structure for us across all 3 Brattleboro town schools. Very successful. So we gave every incoming kindergarten parent had an opportunity to come in. They had a scheduled time to meet with administrators and their child's teacher and other school personnel. And it felt, the feedback that we got, that it was very positive. A lot of increased ability to connect with adults in the building, which was nice. On April 30th, at a staff meeting, we all watched the documentary I Am From Here and engaged in a staff conversation, which was very interesting and very reflective on our school and our community and our state. And it was a great opportunity for us to all sort of come together around this particular documentary that has to do with race in Vermont and the experience of students of color going to school within our state. So we had the opportunity to engage as a full staff around that video, which was nice. And that's that. Questions?
John, is there a chorus? I was really happy to hear how things have really blossomed at Green Street in terms of chorus. Like a banner here.
Yeah.
But I'm just curious, you mentioned band night in your report,
Mm-hmm.
and there is now this choral version of that for school courses.
There is not currently a chorus at Academy, but that's something that Dudley and I and our music department have talked about, really wanted to introduce.
I'm not bringing that up because I'm not impressed with what's in here.
Yeah.
I was just curious.
Yeah, no, it's a good
how
question.
that's going,
Yeah, and it is neat to see it Green Street in popular. That's good. I think it would be a nice addition. So you'll see attached to the report, I have information sheets on each of the 4 new hires that I'd like to present to you. The first is for our school counselor position. We through a hiring process, and we would like to propose that we hire Anastasia Ocasio. She is just finishing her school counseling degree from UMass, the Master's in School Counseling. She has been an intern in our district at Fighting Central School this year. Very highly regarded. Aside from the letters of recommendation that people wrote about her, people contacted us just on their own accord, singing her praises. And very impressed by her and very, very excited about this hire.
Would you like to go through and we can act all 4 at once?
We have to do them separately.
Do you have to do them separately?
I think we do.
Okay. I have a motion to accept the recommendation to hire Anastasia Ocasio.
I would second that.
Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Next, this year, Abby Wicker has been serving as a 3rd grade classroom teacher on a 1-year contract. This was a last-minute resignation at the very end of last summer, and we were very fortunate at that time to have Abby step in as a 3rd grade classroom teacher. She's done a phenomenal job. We posted and interviewed for that position, and I would like to recommend that we hire Abby on a more permanent basis. She is currently finishing up a master's degree in math education, which brings a sort of unique skill set to our teaching staff that is sort of absent from our academy staff right now. She also has a strong interest in theater and has brought a lot to our theater program at Academy School, and has really been a very engaged, active member of our community, and really done a phenomenal job in 3rd grade this year, and we would like to propose to hire her on a more permanent basis.
She has background in performing arts and American Sign Language.
She is.
Fascinating.
Go ahead, Robin.
I was just going to say, I move that we accept the recommendation to hire permanently Abby Wicker as the third grade teacher.
Second.
Moved and seconded to hire Abby Wicker as third grade teacher for Academy. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So done.
Moving on. Very similar situation. This year, we were fortunate to welcome Michael Lonergan on a one-year teaching contract. Many of you may be familiar with Michael. He is a long-time teacher within the Brattleboro schools, primarily at the middle school at BMC. He was a social studies teacher there for years. He joined our teaching staff this year, filling a one-year contract teaching 5th grade. Michael has again been a phenomenal addition to our teaching staff. Has a remarkable ability to connect with students in a very positive way. And it's truly a natural in the classroom, and it's had such a positive impact on students this year. We would like to hire Michael in a permanent role as a 5th grade classroom teacher.
I move we accept the recommendation and hire Michael Lonergan as the 5th grade teacher.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
All right.
Next.
And finally, we would like to propose that we hire Darylyn Burse as a 2nd grade teacher. This is particularly exciting because, as you know, last year we started this partnership with Antioch to host Antioch interns. Initially just at Academy, and this year it's been at Academy and Green Street School. And Darylyn has been with us this year as an Antioch intern and has been truly phenomenal. I think in my experience, reviewing applications and letters of recommendation, I've never seen such strong letters of recommendation for a candidate. She's truly beloved by students and by staff that have had the chance to work with her. And as an intern who is in our building half-time, has had a very dramatic impact on our school community and school culture. She leads that wilderness after-school club that I've mentioned, and is a very talented educator. It's nice to see the fruition of the Antioch Town School partnership. And to my knowledge, this would be the first time that an Antioch intern would be hired as a teacher in our school district. And I can't say enough about her ability. I think very highly of her. I would like to nominate her to be a 2nd grade teacher.
And how do you pronounce her last name?
Burse.
Burse, thank you. Okay. We have a motion to hire Darylyn Burse for the 2nd grade teacher at Academy School.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All those in
Just
favor?
a quick question. Just reading the bottom, how long will it take for her to be licensed?
She is going through the licensure process
Okay.
now, so she will be licensed by the
Okay.
summer.
Perfect.
So she's completed all of her licensure requirements from a coursework standpoint.
Thank you.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
We can keep these back. These please. Oh, no, it's just the summer, so we don't have to get them back, right?
Right.
Right.
One more thing that I'd like to add, you can see on the bottom of the summary that we would like to request an executive session to discuss a student placement matter. That does not have urgency, so I'd like to propose that we wait until our next board meeting.
Okay. And what was that again? For what purpose, John?
It's a discussion around student placement.
Okay.
That, due to the circumstances, requires some confidentiality.
Okay, that will be on the agenda. Thank you.
Resignation, I forgot to share in my
Okay.
report, if that's okay. I'm going to ask Kelsey to read it. I forgot to bring hard copies, but we can forward the email to you guys as well.
Yeah, great.
It said, hello, Green Street friends. Some of you may know that I applied and interviewed for an AST position in Wyndham Central. After much contemplation, I have decided to take the position. This was the hardest professional decision I have ever had to make because I love it here so much. However, there are many reasons why I've decided to move on. This is an incredible opportunity to help lead a district towards a more effective MTSS model, much like we have here at GSS. It is also the district that I live in, and logistically it makes more sense for my family. I've learned so much from many of you and will never forget my time here. I'm sure there will be many tears, from myself of course, as the year comes to a close. From the bottom of my heart, I want to thank everyone here for being so welcoming and just an all-around great group of people to work with.
And who is this?
Renee Merluser, current fifth grade teacher. Really great teacher.
A motion to accept Renee's resignation.
I move we accept with regrets.
Seconded, it's been moved and seconded. All those, any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Copies of Lyle's report as well.
Great.
Mark, I assume it's all on School Spring and all of...
Yeah, she was hired shortly after our last board meeting, so it's actually been advertised for a good close to 4 weeks now. So,
Wait, this is someone who you just hired?
what's that? I've not hired the position yet.
Yes, Jerry has to go.
How long was she at the school before this resignation?
Renee came to us from Colorado. We Skype interviewed her 3 years ago. She was moving to the Northeast.
It was recent.
She was here for 3 years.
I thought you said we just hired her after the last board meeting.
No.
Not that brief a stay.
Yeah, she really had a taste for school in 2 weeks.
I'm going to ask, before we do the Julian's administrative report, Mariah, would you and Deb kind of combine, double down on the early ed reports, if you would, please? Also, I wanted to just to let you know, since before I forget it, that next Monday here at 7 p.m. and next Thursday at Guilford, the transition board is meeting. And if you wanted to come and talk about early ed services and maybe us, that board considering a seat on the board as well, vote, not probably again non-voting, although who knows what might happen. But so I just want you to know that that's happening. If you want to let your colleagues know.
So first, we meaning myself and 10 other UK partners that are representing Brattleboro students. So we'd like to thank you for the opportunity to be on the board and to share with you the information about our programs. So counting early education services, right now we have 159 students within our programs. And we asked each program to just give a couple of highlights as to what's going on in their program, and then we created a report that we will share with everyone. So the Brattleboro Center for Children is currently doing a little bit of a facelift, and they have their logo going onto their walls into their program, and they're really excited to improve the appearance and the functionality of their program. Hilltop Montessori has had 2 family community events in the past 2 weeks, all related to music, one with Andy. Horizon Early Learning Program has an art show going on tonight. Little Red House Early Learning Program has created a wonderful relationship with the elders at Holton Home, and they're visiting every other month, and they're looking forward to their June visit. They're also excited about working on a garden plot that they have on Stockwell Drive. The Mulberry Bush Center is putting together their 30th year celebration that they're going to have in June. They were also awarded their Strengthening Families grant again, and they're continuing to do upgrades on their playground. And this month they'll be hosting family luncheons in each classroom. Timpson Hill has their annual Spring Festival on Saturday, May 18th from 10 to 1, and their summer camp open house. Winston Prouty has their two preschool classrooms has pyramid model coaches, and they're celebrating Teacher Appreciation this week. And then at Westby Nursery School, we are collaborating with Cub Scouts Pack 447, the residents at Pine Heights, and the members of the First Congregational Church to create a raised garden. It's a community garden that the students from Westby went to Pine Heights and they planted seeds together, and they've been growing in the classroom, and then the Cub Scouts are going to be building the raised flower bed, and then over the summer the member of the church will help to water and weed them. And then we also have 21 chicken eggs in the classroom incubator that are hopefully due to hatch on May 17th, and we'd love for anyone to stop by and check out the process if you'd like to. Our one ask of the board is that with the merger going forward, you consider us as being part of the board, and one of us will be happy to go to the transitional board meeting. And Deb, I'll let you give updates on EES.
So just a couple of quick updates from EES. Our Family Fun Day was a great success on April 27th. We had about 160 participants. So this was the second year we've done that, and I think it's going to be a tradition from here on out. We are offering a course for some of our employees, some of our teachers this summer, supporting young children with diverse abilities, and we have, I think, 6 or 7 staff members who are signed up to take that course. I was at the National Head Start Conference in San Antonio last week and heard some legislative forecasting. Head Start funding looks good in the federal budget, and we are actually supported again, and we're happy about that. And there may be some more funding coming for the dose and duration, which is what we just received some money for, which helps extend part of the Head Start funded part of our day. And we received funds for part of our Head Start slots, so there's an opportunity coming up to apply for the other part, which will be exciting. And the Parent-Child Center hat that I wear, the state-funded part of EES, continues to spend time lobbying our legislators to provide us with some increases. We've been level funded for over 20 years. At the same time, they are considering our ask, but they're also thinking about cutting our Reach Up program. We provide case management for some of the younger participants in the Reach Up program who have young children. And so we are going back and forth with that, and the Senate and the House are going to decide on their budget very soon in the next couple of weeks, so we'll know more about what that looks like. That's it.
Thank you. Joanne, this is a full report here.
Yes. I think Lyle hoped to be able to be here to present this, but she has left it with us for us to review. And so she's noted really the focus of her work over the month, and clearly she had a very busy month. So there's a lot of activity. And you can also see, as the principals were saying, the May and June is totally packed. One thing to note, as you know, on May 24th, there's the Equity Summit at SIT, and board members are encouraged to attend that summit.
What's the date?
May 24th.
Okay, that's in the calendar.
Yeah. And I believe you got emails about registration, but I'm happy to re-forward that link to you for registration purposes. I think it's 9 to 2:30, or 9:30 to 2:30. And then there's just a lot of dates in June. So she's noted the most important June dates. We make an effort to coordinate the graduation and move up ceremonies across the town, so there are not conflicts with that. So there's a lot.
Any questions or comments? Deb?
Speaking of May 24th, I forgot, I left this on everybody's spot. If you can attend our annual self-assessment, it's happening on May 24th, at the Scott Farm in Dummerston. We'll be providing lunch at noon, and then our activities will begin from 1:45 until 3:30 that afternoon. And this is the way that we collect data to help determine our strategic planning for the upcoming year. And we need and desire community input, so if you can come, that would be wonderful. And if anyone from the audience would like a flyer, I have one.
Any other administrative report information?
I guess I have a comment on that.
Yes.
So I really, as a newcomer to the board, I really appreciate you guys putting all of these together and bringing so much information beforehand, because otherwise we would be disconnected. So I really appreciate that. I guess I wonder how, and this might be a question more for the merged board, but I'm going to put it out there in case this board ends up moving forward, but also something for all of us to consider in the future. I wonder how we can act more as a strategic partner to you all from the community's perspective, because it feels like you've done a lot of work to give us all the information, which we definitely need. But I wonder if it could be informative and strategic, so that then, because I don't really feel like I have any, a few questions here and there and nitty-gritties. There's never a big conversation, and I'd love to think of us more as a really, a more active partner to you. So that maybe it's that you give us information a little beforehand, we can ask you the nitty-gritty, and then we really focus in on a topic where all you feel like you could use our perspectives on it, or it's something you're really grappling with. Obviously, it would take time to build up trust if there was some things that were going to be shared that weren't so wonderful going on or something. But I say this because I do see us more as, I'd love to see us more like that. And then we could be more useful to you all, instead of you all feeling like you have to do all this work and then, we're just like, thumbs up. So just something to think about, maybe all of us, how we see us interacting about kind of and not getting so involved in the day-to-day, but how we can help. I'd like to see.
Yeah, I think it comes down to building the agenda for each meeting as well.
Yeah.
So maybe focusing on some certain topics you might want to dig a little deeper into. But I like the ability to give as much information as possible, just so you know what's going on.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And possibly, attend some activities if you're able to. You guys are always invited to our evenings. But yeah, I like the idea of really targeting some agenda items we can dig deeper into. That'd be good.
That's a great suggestion. I think the administrative reports have been sort of an ongoing, evolving process anyway, and identifying some targets or some information targets to have on each of them makes good sense.
I'm just concerned about the amount of time. It works at the Brattleboro town level, but the merge board is moving to a much larger map, and so the model may have to change. And I think something will be lost in that, because when we get these reports, we're getting an overview of what's actually happening. And that could be a loss, but it may just not be physically possible to hear administrative reports from 10 different programs on a monthly basis.
Yep.
And it may have to turn to more what you're talking about, to focus on, well, what's our strategy for the arts, or what's our strategy for environmental education, or our strategy for STEM, or those kinds of things, and have a more thematic approach of collaboration with the administration, because it's just changing.
Yeah.
Thank you. We're going to table the VSBA Code of Ethics under unfinished business, and we'll move directly to new business and the Brattleboro Town School District fund balance. I just want to say a few words about this and then ask the board to give their perspective, and then open it to the public for conversation as well. The Brattleboro Town, our fund balance, our reserve fund, is tax revenues that have been collected over the years for the Brattleboro schools. And a few years ago, the representative town meeting granted the town school board the authority to do whatever we wanted with it. Basically, to assign those funds without having to bring them in front of the representative town meeting, which is typically what happens with reserve funds. So we don't know exactly what the total will be until the audit is finished in August, and despite some attorneys' opinions to the contrary, this board will fiscally stay in existence until the audit is complete. But if we want to do anything with that money other than have it absorbed into the merged school district, we need to decide that before July 1st, and preferably before the 22nd, because that's when the merged budget will be warned, and the merged budget includes $330,000 from our reserve fund that we put in to our district budget, just the Brattleboro budget, to reduce the tax rate. So that's actually a part of our reserve fund. It is at this point included in that budget, but that budget that was voted on and approved at town meeting, if it winds up being moot or going away, then the commitment of that $330,000 is also can be changed. We can take that back, basically. But somewhere in excess of $700,000 and possibly over $1 million, and whatever surplus is left over after this 2019 or 2018-2019 school year will be calculated in the audit, and that amount of money will be what we're talking about. So we don't know what it is. It's a long way of saying that. So this came up because several people asked what's going to happen with that money. It's Brattleboro taxpayer money. What should we do with it? So that's why we're here. And there are a number of things we can do, and I imagine more ideas than these, but one is to do a project that would benefit the Brattleboro town schools and moderate the impact of taxes over in the future. Another would be to there are about 6,000 tax-paying entities, property tax-paying entities in town. Just send everybody a check for $150 or however many dollars it would be if we divided it up to basically refund the surplus that we didn't spend. And the other is to have it be assumed by the Wyndham Southeast School District, the merged district. So I'd like to start with just comments from the board or thoughts from the board about what we might want to consider.
David, can I ask you the informational question?
Certainly, George.
What can or cannot be done with the money? I mean, for just spurious examples, could we fund the skate park? Could we give the money to the town? Could we send the money to the Bernie Sanders for president campaign?
Yeah.
What are the limitations?
There aren't any.
Aren't any?
No. It's the way it's an unassigned fund balance. We haven't committed it to any projects in our 5-year capital plan. It's money that we have kept, usually a lot less than this, that we kept just to moderate. If there was some big expense one year, we'd have a couple of $1,000s to put in to cover that, so the tax rate would stay stable. It was mostly for tax stabilization. But once the representative town meeting said that we gave us the authority to use it as we see fit, we could buy a new changing room at the pool, which would help kids, or chip in on the new water plant for the town.
We checked with an attorney on that statement, being able to not use it for the schools.
Well, it's Brattleboro tax revenue.
Right, but
and the school district's going to disappear, so it won't be spent necessarily on the schools.
Right,
Well,
but right now.
Our schools or
Yes.
on these other schools.
But to
think
just-
Kim's asking, is it legal to spend it on something that's not related to this or the future school district?
Yes, that's what I'm asking.
As far as I know, and I'm looking through the laws, the statutes, and talking with the people from the Secretary of State's office, there's not really a restriction on how we use it.
Do we have emails saying that? I mean, we need to.
Well, if we make a decision, we can certainly just run that decision by an attorney if we think
I
it's
think Lyle
questionable.
advised that we would run by the suggestions that people have by the attorney to see what was possible.
Andy, is that your hand
Well,
up?
yeah, that is my hand.
I know that one thing that has been talked about is energy work on Oak Grove School. There's been a large amount of work done on Academy, I believe, with a new boiler. Green Street has had a huge number of technological innovations done to the building that have, I hope, improved the heating system that was there. Yeah, it's probably a whole new world.
Yeah.
There are some things here, but it is interesting to say, well, let's spend it on a particular school when this school will become part of the merged district, and a decision could be made about any individual school in the district that could, 10 years down the line, undermine some of those savings. So I'm just wondering if, it's a complicated question. I mean, because we're spending on the Brattleboro building that's come July 1st is going to be a Southeast School District building. Then it's like a strategic move. We're making a decision that we're capable of making now, because once that funds become part of the merged district, that the merged district could make a different decision for what to do with that money. So there's also just a strategic thing that we have a moment where we can legally spend this money. What's something that we think we should, an opportunity that, you know, seize the moment, kind of seize the day, because we have this opportunity. These energy improvements on the Oak Grove School, are they, I'm trying to understand this 5-year plan here, are they already scheduled as part of a long-term plan, or they're just not there?
No, a few years ago when we, I think it was 15 or 16, when we formed an energy committee to get it to do energy audits of all the buildings, partly because of what we knew was necessary at Green Street, or was coming at Green Street, and had already come to Academy. The system was failing, or at least performing really poorly. And so we had audits done of all the buildings, and we implemented pretty much everything in the Academy audit. And pretty much everything in the, is there anything we didn't do in your audit? We did the windows, and we did the controls, and the boilers, obviously, and window quilts, and insulation, and ceiling, and stuff, yeah.
There's still some ventilation work that will be done by summer.
Yeah, and the Oak Grove one, because it didn't have a 80-year-old boiler, and the boiler is not worn out yet. It's got probably several years left. I don't know exactly how many it's got, but it is an oil boiler. But so there wasn't the urgency.
Well, my feeling is that based upon town meeting this year in March, there is a huge interest in anything that has to do with energy efficiency in this town. The town meeting is very interested. No matter what happened to this building long-term, it's always an investment to take a building, if this became a community performing arts center at some point down the road. I have no inside information on this, but I'm just saying that if we put this money in here, we don't have a guarantee after July 1st, the long-term future of this building. But you could make an argument that improving this building, it will remain a public building, I'm imagining. So, but I'm very interested in hearing the public speak, because there's been advertising to come and express yourself.
Yep.
And I think it's really important that soon we get their opinions.
We'll get there. Yeah, I just want to hear from the board first. Robin?
Can I just ask, can you explain what is the legal obligation of people to use this money as far as capital plans? Because I'm just wondering, if we're going to make a decision for this money, then does that have to be something where we actually pay the money to some other agency for the thing that we're going to buy before July 1st? Or is it enough to say, it's in this plan, we've allocated it, and we're planning that after we get, plans and bids and stuff like that? What is the timeline here? How do we legally designate money for a future project that might not occur before that date?
We designate the funds that will be available at the after the audit is all done to be used for, and then we identify the specific purpose.
Okay, and how does that align with what we already have allocated in this capital plan?
If we haven't assigned anything, and we haven't assigned any, we haven't said, okay, we're going to use some of this next year for the academy building, or we're gonna use some of
I
this
mean,
next
but it
year for
is
the roof.
listed that way. It is listed as like, oh, in 2020, we have, you know, these projects listed for roofing,
Right.
window systems, and modular replacement for academy. So I'm just wondering, how binding is this? You know what I'm saying?
Yes, we haven't assigned, that is not designed or a plan to how to use the reserve fund. That's a plan for capital improvements that we need to do over time, and we decide year to year what we're gonna use for it.
We don't
haven't-
have the reserve fund tied to these projects.
We haven't,
that's
it's
what
not
you're-
tied to that,
Okay,
right?
but we
Unless
could
we tie it.
say, we'd like to use our reserve fund to do this, and this from the capital.
We could go
We
through
could
and
do that.
identify things in the capital plan and say, this is what we want the money spent for, and that's what would happen.
Okay, even though that wouldn't be occurring, that we wouldn't be paying the contractors before July 1st, it would still
No.
be a binding spending of that money.
We designate it.
Okay, that's what I just wanted to figure out.
Just to clarify the balance, the 1,172,000 figure was from June 30th, 2018. And then the board put 330,000 into the FY19 budget, bringing down the total to the 842,000. And so if this year, the coming year has the deduction of another 330,000, it would be about 500,000 in the fund.
And then whatever's left over after that.
From this year.
Right, is that, just to clarify that?
So 2 comments. So I know one thing we were talking about was if we did something like this, it would moderate the impact on taxes. So I guess if we did something like the energy, put some money into energy or whatnot,
Yeah.
I guess it would moderate some impact on taxes, but it really depends on what the other school districts are doing. If they've not planned anything, then our taxes might not be that impacted. Is that the case?
Well, you mean if we did something like the improvements here?
Yeah. If their rate was going up and ours went down for a little bit, it still might mean that taxpayers don't see any money back.
No, I think I'm not sure.
If it's not in the budget, it's not going to impact the tax rate.
Right.
So if we're paying for something, like say we wanted to do the roof,
Yep.
but that's not in the budget this year, it's
Yep.
just, so it's not going to impact the taxes.
Okay.
Because we're putting money towards something in the future that we weren't considering for next year.
Okay. So, I mean, actually, regardless of that, I think, I guess one thing that we didn't talk about yet, and I wonder if it could be a use of funds. I'm not opposed to using funds for any of these reasons, but I guess putting together some type of scholarship fund or endowment that Brattleboro students could use seems like an amazing use of resources, because even if this building wasn't used in the future or anything like that, Brattleboro students would have access. I don't know exactly what the need for a scholarship would be, if it would be related to, I don't know, some type of college scholarship, or I know I've talked to a lot of, and we don't deal with, on our board, kids who are in high school, but I've talked to a lot of people who've graduated and they seem to not be able to find jobs here. So maybe it's a small grant that they can help start up their business, or I don't really know, but it's a good pot of money, and I guess if we put it in the right, I'm not so savvy on banking, but if you put it in the right banking situation, maybe that endowment could last a really long time and it would be great for Brattleboro kids to have. So that's one suggestion.
David, I have another procedural.
Well, let me ask to see if
question.
Kim wants to say anything first.
And I'm torn back and forth because I know it is Brattleboro, our Brattleboro taxpayers have generously given this every year, and we've been able to build up a pot. But I'm just concerned that we think about using it all when we still have our Brattleboro students next year. Whether we're a Brattleboro Town School Board or we're a merged board, we still have Brattleboro students we need to take care of. And I'm concerned that we decide to not have it available and, something happens, and if we had left some or all or whatever amount alone, we would have been set for that emergency. But seeing we decided to do, to spend it someplace else or move it someplace else, that is not available. I mean, because even though we're not a board, there's still a Brattleboro Town School Board. There's still our Brattleboro kids that we need to think about.
I'm on a similar wavelength of questioning Kim. I think that's a really good point. I mean, the purpose of that fund, of holding on to that money from year to year, is a cushion from a year when tax revenues are down, when an unexpected thing happens, a flood, a windstorm that tears the roof off of a building, whatever. And that need is still there. Has there been any discussion at the merge board, at the transitional board level of what are other towns bringing anything to the table in terms, to the new entity in terms of a undesignated fund? And is there, I know at the town level, we're always hearing from our town administration the need for 9–10% of the budget as a cushion, as a safety feature, evening function. Because I agree with Kim, we're merging, but we still have all the exact same responsibilities there.
Yes.
That's not changing.
Yep. All the districts have some reserved funds. That part of that big packet of budget information that we got. And some of them have outstanding debt. And the largest in both cases is the high school, with over 8.7 million in reserve and 9.6 in debt. Putney has the town school districts. Putney has the largest debt of $1 million, and Dummerston has 25,000, which I think is paid off. Maybe paid off this year, but so there is revenue and there are debts coming. The 10% number is typically recommended for municipalities where something like a grader would cost $2 million. And in the school district case, we've maintained it primarily to stabilize the taxes.
Yeah.
Spoon. Please say your name and...
Spoon Agave, District 3.
Thank you.
If that money belongs to the people of Brattleboro, it belongs in the hands of the people of Brattleboro. You don't, it doesn't seem to me, have any idea how much of that reserve fund the new consolidated school district will need. They may, in the money that they will have to work with, without any of the surplus added in, may be more than adequate. Maybe they will have a reserve themselves, even if we extract the reserves that are there now, because every budget is always padded so that there is a little reserve at the end of every year. They do not have a reserve policy. They don't have a policy for surplus reserves. The new board, the new school district, does not have a capital plan. And when it has one, there's no way of knowing how they will be prioritizing things. So for this town to decide, we can't give the merged school district money with expect that they have any obligation to use it in any way we want, because our voice will only be 1/4. And so all that's up in the air. So I feel that all the $330,000 that we intended to use to reduce our taxes, if we left that in for that purpose, it'll be reducing the taxes of all 4 towns. And that changes if what the people of this town might have wanted to do or not. I don't know if people here in Brattleboro want to use our money to reduce the taxes in Dummerston, etc. So, because the money belongs to the people of Brattleboro, and it is really unknown how much of it is needed, whether any of it or all of it, That money should just be removed and placed in a special account within the town's reserves and left untouched until the new district is formed. They have a budget, they see their expenses, they know what they're doing. And then, of course, they will be more than free, like every other entity, to come to the town next March and ask for any part of that they need. And they will be able to explain exactly what they need it for, and the people can decide, because it's their money and we should be able to make that decision. So that is my recommendation, is just to put that money in the town's reserves and ask the town to just keep that money aside until it's known what to do with it. And that there is a much larger body of people who, I don't know how this would finally, I don't think you would be making the final decision right here and now how to use that money. But this doesn't feel representative of the town, certainly in terms of how well publicized this and understood this issue is.
Are you, just a clarification, are you saying that it should be moved to the town reserve and then the representative town meeting would hear the proposal and decide?
If the school district needs some of that money and said, this is money that was in our reserves and we're running short because we didn't have enough, okay, so then we could say, all right, we'll allocate you 500,000 of that, or whatever they ask for.
Thank you. Other comments? Yes, please. Sorry.
Did you call me?
Yes, please.
All right, so I'm Katie
Oh,
Wilson.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. I'm Katie Wilson. I'm a resident of Brattleboro, and I'm here to ask that we reserve some of this funding for the Oak Grove School. We don't know with the new school district when Oak Grove will be given the opportunity to have the kind of refurbishments that the other schools in the Brattleboro Town District have had the opportunity for. Particularly, we have some very immediate needs around our playground, which we've moved forward with as PTO and with a lot of community input and hiring an expert who can help us create a master plan. We knew that we would have to phase it in over time as we were able to fundraise for it and get allocations for it as well. And we're asking now that we have the opportunity to have allocations from an unreserved fund to be able to fund some of that. Additionally, I'm very interested in the energy efficiency plans for this building particularly, but not interested in the upgrade to the boiler, since the boiler is practically new. But any energy efficiency measures that we do in this building will improve both the future for our children as well as for saving, no matter who's paying the oil bill next year. And so those are some of the priorities that I would like to see some of the funds balance used for, and I hope that you will keep that under consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Cassandra.
I'm Cassandra Holloway. I'm from District 3. And I am making the recommendation of hiring a grant writer who can collectively serve the schools and other community nonprofits that serve the youth and the families. Over time, a grant writer could potentially generate significant funds to further worthy initiatives. Grant writers devote their time to researching and writing grants. Thin-staffed nonprofits and schools and municipalities don't always have the expertise, knowledge, and experience, or especially the time for grant writing, and are usually sacrificing making progress on their goals and focusing on managing and approving their projects and programs as they are seeking funding. I've already heard a lot around energy efficiency or recreation or programming, playgrounds. I mean, so if you have a grant writer who focuses just on that, that allows to free up staff and volunteers to do the work, and then that person can potentially bring in thousands, if not millions of dollars into towns. A lot of communities use them, counties use them. So I put the proposal in to fund a grant writer, and have more information I'll happy to share with the board and to have further discussion about that. Thank you.
George,
George Crowell, West Brattleboro. I have a real problem with this because I'm not sure what's going to happen. I'm not sure, you're talking about spending or encumbering the money. Anything you're going to do that's not going to actually take place and the check's written by the end of June, you're depending on it being an encumbrance on the new board.
Yes.
Okay? You have no control over that board. I know some of you probably will be members of it, but it's an entirely different entity. You could decide to do the energy at Oak Grove. You can't let a contract by the end of June. You don't have time to do that. So you decide to do that, and then next July, the board gets the bids in and says, no, we don't want to do that. Forget it. But they've got the money. I don't think, I can give grant writer another example of an encumbrance on the new board. It's been suggested another encumbrance, which I think would be a good idea, would be to increase the diversity coordinator position from half-time to full-time, okay? But all of these are encumbrances. It's you're saying, look, new board, here's some money and this is what we'd like you to do with it. But we cease to exist, you cease to exist as of July 1. So I would think that this board should focus on what you can spend before the end of June. Now maybe you decide that it's the right thing is to spend nothing, but in other words then to give the money to the new consolidated district. I mean that is a decision, okay? But anything else I think you should focus on, that check should be cut while you still have the power to do it. I think you need to consider that. One thing you might do, but I'm not at all opposed, for instance, to giving the money to the town and then figure out what happens to it later. Other towns have done that. I believe it was Putney, sold the school town forest to the town to keep that in the town. Am I right about that? Some districts are going to be giving debt to the new combined district, which we all then assume. I don't hear those towns saying, well, we'll pay off that debt before we encumber you guys with it. So if that's, therefore, on the flip side of the same coin, that money is Brattleboro's money, and I can see the reason for doing something with it to the town. My comment on the skateboard park was not facetious. That's been kicked around, what, 10 years, Andy? How long has that been going on?
Longer than that.
And that is something, by the way, that kids, not just from Brattleboro, but from the other surrounding towns would benefit from, if we could actually get that done. So I think that the board needs to focus on what you can spend the money on before the end of June. That I think should be your first focus. And I don't think you can do the energy stuff at Oak Grove by then. These things I don't think you guys can do.
Yes.
So EES as an Inc.
Could you speak a little louder?
Yes.
Even with my hearing aid, I
Early
can't.
Education Services has a separate nonprofit organization, EES Inc. And we have a very broad-based mission, which is something like serving the young families of this community. We have a board, and we're actually in the process of expanding that. And so taking off on the idea of spending the money before the end of June, we could put the money in EES Inc. and the board could make decisions about how that is spent.
Certainly be a boost to the preschools. Yep. Robin?
I just have a question, because it was my impression that under, is Act 60 the one by which we all send our money to the state and then get it back? That I'm not sure it's legal for the towns to be spending money on the school district. So, and I'm not sure also about if it was things that were benefiting outside EES, like something specific to one of these other buildings. Can we legally have these outside entities that we're gonna perhaps give this money to, give it back to us, or is it, that's it? Because I would question the legality of us going to ask Brattleboro's town representative meeting to give us money for something that we needed for our school district. I'm not sure that is allowable.
I'm not sure either. I think if we gave it to, like, gave it to ES and then went, well, we won't be we, assuming we're not we anymore. Or like Spoon's idea, if it was given to the town and kept in reserve fund and the district came and asked to have it designated, I don't know. I don't see any, no one has said, indicated there's any limit like that on spending money. So I just don't know.
On towns spending money on their school district, I think there is a limit on that, because that would create the inequity that law was trying to solve.
Oh, I see what you
The
mean.
whole point of it was
Yeah.
that you don't get to have the towns with all the money get the good stuff and everybody else gets squat. The whole point of it is that we all give and then we receive equally throughout the state. So I think that specific mechanism might be against the law.
Yep, you're right. It very well may be. Yes, Cassandra?
I would just propose kind of what's been said, is that there's not a lot of time here. Is there a way to kind of put the money into some kind of reserve so that the town reps can actually have a further discussion of how they want to spend that money? Maybe with some kind of a goal of that, of serving the Brattleboro youth, or to, that way there's some time to get more input from town reps and just a holding space with the intention of the board having an intention for that, and the town reps being able to kind of decide on how they want to see it used.
Again, I think that might be a legal question that we would have to ask.
Yeah, I think if it were, as Robin said, if it was going to be given to the town or to the schools, that is a separate. That would be a question around Act 60, because the purpose of Act 60 was so the towns that had a lot of wealthy people couldn't have better schools because people just donated money or they set up endowments that people contributed to. Those things have to be separate and private and really for specific activities.
Right.
Yes. It
So
can be
maybe
used for
that-
curricular.
Well, hold on, one at a time, please. Cassandra, finish up.
So maybe the thought is then is whatever you're funding serving the broader community, not just Brattleboro, if that's kind of,
Or not
again,
just the schools.
right, but rather the people that the schools are serving, which is the youth and the families, so. Just a thought.
All right.
Oh, sorry.
I just didn't know if it was possible to divide the money by the Brattleboro town schools. I mean, every school has a wish list, and I don't really think it would be hard for them to spend that money. And maybe I'm saying, sucking out, but, I mean.
Pretty good spending.
Yeah.
We'd have to look into that. I think we could use it for capital, for like a roof or something like that, but not for programs. I don't believe. Yes.
Well, I'm wondering if maybe, given this discussion, if there are some, legal arrangements we could make, like contracts with the new school district, that we've set aside this, make a contract with them, we've set aside this money to do X, Y, and Z, this is what that money will go toward. That doesn't seem outside the realm of possibility to have that contract between different, parties. So I think that that's something we should look into.
David, I'm a little confused at the total amount of money. There was a lot of numbers thrown around.
Yeah.
What is within $20,000, the best guesstimate?
Well, I'm not sure. Well, why don't you, would you do that again, Julie? What you said, because the number I
Yeah.
got from Frank was $1 million.
Yeah, so the
little over $1 million.
$1,172,354 was, that was as of June 30th, 2018. The board put $330,000 into the FY19 budget, which brought the total down to $842,354. And then with the upcoming budget, as David mentioned, there was another $330,000 put into the FY20 budget. So that would bring it down to approximately $500,000.
Yeah, plus whatever we might have left over this year.
I find myself really being drawn by the idea that the people of Brattleboro should have a bigger voice in spending the money. I find myself, that's a process thing that, and I'm also swayed by George Carvel's talk about trying to achieve goals that we see in the new school system from this body right now seems a little shaky, not knowing what's going to happen in the future. I don't know if it is possible to transfer that money to the town unassigned and let the representatives of the people of Brattleboro assess the need. It's really a question about need and priorities.
But that's the thing that I just brought up about Act 60, is if we give the money to the town, they can't give it back. I don't think they can give it back to us. So
Not
they
for
have to
schools. I think
spend
you're
it on
right.
something else. So if we want to have the choice to spend any of this money on the schools, then we cannot give it to the town. That's a very unlegally informed opinion. So perhaps I'm wrong on that, but that's how I would read that.
It's an excellent question to have asked.
Yeah. The only thing I can say for sure, because I've had advice from from Brad James at the Agency of Education, is that if we designate it for a particular use, that's what happens to the money.
That's the encumbrance that George was talking about.
Yeah. And there's no indication that, I mean, that if we encumber it, we are legal when we make that action. And the succeeding board has to follow suit. I know what you said is that's not consistent with the information I've got.
Okay, good. That's good.
I think it depends a little bit too on what are we choosing. Because I think if it's something like a position, either increasing the diversity coordinator or a grant writer, that's an in perpetuity thing. So obviously we can't this money's only going to last a few years for a job position. Then after that, the board could do whatever they wanted. They could cut that or not. But if we're just encumbering the amount of the salary for the next year's budget, the 2020 year, or a future year if they needed more time to hire and search for the person, then that money would still be encumbered towards that role, just the same as if it was like a roof or whatever. Does that seem right?
Well, we could, that's one of the things we might be able to do. The problem with using reserve fund for a position is when the reserve fund runs out, you've got that position and you've got that salary and benefit package that now has to get added into everything else. It's a deficit that you start the budget process.
And then you're depending on someone else, the other board, deciding whether or not to continue that.
So is there any way to put the money in some sort of trust that's not managed by the town? I mean, I guess Deb said
That would be
it's
the
nonprofit.
yeah.
Are there any other mechanisms that can do that, or have a trust that's at the school level that's only for example, because Mark's here, it's only for Oak Grove, even though it's managed by the larger district?
Brattleboro Endowment Fund.
Yeah, the endowments are private, and they're private funds. I don't know, I mean, that's a question, that's a question to be raised. If we could put it into one of the existing trusts, there's very specific purposes that it would then be used for. We know that those are legal purposes, so that might be the thing to do. We could create a separate one for entrepreneurs that we had earlier. But again, questions to be answered.
If we look at the needs that have been identified by this town maybe informally, just based upon the discussions that we hear at town meeting. And one is a need to reduce our reliance on fossil fuels for our infrastructure. One is the state of early childhood child care and preschool education, where we're expecting so much from people we pay so little. I don't know how to get the money to flow in that direction or to ease another part of the early childhood education budget so that those workers who play a critical role in the lives of our families and the lives of our children, we're expecting a lot for very little money. And I don't know if there's a way to ease some other part of the budget so that people, because you have an issue around attracting committed employees, and this affects families directly, and it affects our children as in terms of their readiness to enter our elementary schools when they have more unpredictability in their early years. So if we have money, and I would say the problem with dividing it up, and I can understand that $500,000 if you gave a couple $100,000 to Academy based on student enrollment, you could sort of easily have it just sort of filter out. But that process seems a little vague to me. Kind of like Christmas morning, like here's some money that you didn't ask for, or I like the idea of trying to have a more political process of getting people to articulate and rally around a specific need and using the money in a broader forum than a school board meeting.
Sandra?
If there is a need to just spend the money, I know that currently I'm doing focus groups with the schools around the effects of substance use and mental health on families, and I'm already getting some needs from schools. So it might be something to make a proposal. I mean, we talked about early education. We've talked about, again, there's so many needs for these, for families and kids that go beyond just the education piece. It's the supports around the families so that these kids can thrive in their school settings. So I just put that out there as a potential, kind of like the Human Services Grant proposal. If there's some need to spend it, is to kind of do a reach out to organizations that are working already with the schools to kind of reinforce or to enhance what's already there.
You mean like Groundworks or HCRS or something like that?
Yeah. We work with them, Big Brothers, Big Sisters, Boys and Girls Club.
The spoon in the oven.
I sort of understand, I had the thought in my own mind that if the money's put into the town's coffers as a surplus, it feels maybe a little out of I don't know out of whose control anymore. I mean, we are the town, and in thinking about that, it certainly made the point about how, and this has always been problematic, when the state changed the financing for schools and took all the money away and then redistributed it, it actually drove, or one of the consequences was to drive a wedge between the people of a town and the way they educate their kids. Ever since that school funding part changed, more and more of education, of the power, the direction, the control has flowed to the state level. And not long ago, Scott, the governor, made sort of an offhand remark about having one state school district, period, just wiping out the whole thing. And everybody laughed and said, that's ridiculous. Now there is legislation proposing to unify. And again, everybody's laughing, oh, that's not going anywhere. Well, it's not this year. But this is the way, and we see the same thing happening with the state taking over teachers' health care, They want control of all the money, all the salaries, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They'll decide curriculum and everything. So, to me, it's just all the more reason to put the money in the town, and perhaps, I don't see any reason why there can't be an agreement that for at least 1 year, the town will not touch that surplus, even if it needs it, even if there's a hurricane and we need to make repairs, that will be considered off limits, unless there was a special town meeting that we agreed to spend it.
Robin, did you have your
I just wanted to give a suggestion, and I know this whole forum tonight is suggestions. We're not making any decisions tonight. We're going to take all this and run it by a lawyer first before we can even say what are the viable options here.
Figure out what the questions are.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, I liked Mariah's suggestion that I would like to hear from the building principals. What do they feel that their school needs? And I'm not saying if you had all $500,000, what would you get? But just like, what are some needs that could be alleviated by this money? Because I think that the people with the most intimate knowledge of what the schools actually need, which is what this money was designated for, schools, should respond and say, well, what do we need? And especially if any of that is something that we could write a check for by the end of the fiscal year, including EES.
Well,
Well, it doesn't have to be building things either. I'm just saying things that you need, even if you don't own the building that you're in.
I mean, that's a natural thing that I think about, is our buildings. Each school does have a capital plan. So we have identified projects that are going to be costing a lot of money in future years, like next year. I know the roof at Green Street School, it needs to be replaced over the next 3 years at some point, and that's in our capital plan. I believe there's similar roofing needs at Oak Grove and Academy as well.
I know we talked about the green roof at Academy, the presentation by the students.
In terms of energy efficiency, I put in the Green Street budget for this year, if it goes through, to upgrade our lighting to LED, energy efficient lighting. So I think projects like that make a lot of sense because you get it back over time. Maybe we should be looking into solar panels on our roofs. But I naturally think of infrastructure because these buildings, they always cost money. Something's always coming up and we have to stay on top of them.
One of the things to consider in this is what to spend it on. One of the things about Act 46 is that, or one of the positive aspects, if it's something like a school roof comes along, Brattleboro doesn't have to pay for it all by themselves. The other towns would participate. So things like that, it wouldn't necessarily be wise in purely Brattleboro's interest, wise to spend money on that if it's in the capital plan for some time in the future. And the merged district will develop its own capital plan. The thing about energy investments is that you actually, that leads to a reduction in the amount of money that you have to collect every year afterwards. And that's very different than avoiding a future cost by doing a roof now. So it wouldn't be in anybody's tax bill, but it would be, well, it would be in everybody's. If we did it, it wouldn't be in any tax bill in the future. If we didn't, it's in more tax bills than just the Brattleboro one, which is where this money came from. But with the energy, it's really an investment that you get a return on every year for 20 or 30 or more years, depending on what the project is. Let's see, George, who's next?
Sort of to almost take the opposite point of view than what I said a minute ago. I mean it. I think if you're going to spend it, you got to spend it soon. If you think you can encumber it, great. I'm all for energy improvement projects, but in effect, what you've done with the payback, you'll spend Brattleboro tax money on the energy improvement, and the payback benefits Brattleboro and all the other taxpayers, so our money benefits them. I'd like to suggest something entirely different, what you should do. I think you should do nothing. By which I mean, Dave, Andy, you and I, we all fought the merger. It's going to happen. I think we have to learn and work on resolving some of the animosities and some of the concerns, and learn to work together, not as 4 towns, but as one merged district. And just as some of those towns are going to contribute their debt to the merged district, I think that Brattleboro should consider contributing its surplus to the district. It's part of where we're going together. And I confess that I'm not entirely comfortable of trying to sort of grab this money, out of, I don't know, grab this money and use it before we get to be a merged district. I really think that there's good, proper moral reasons for letting this money flow in to the new unified district.
Well, that's an excellent place to stop, but I see a hand that hasn't spoken before, but I would like this to be, unless there's somebody that hasn't said anything that needs to, I'd like to have this be the last question so we can finish our agenda for the evening. They'll come up again or not. We'll see what happens.
My name is Carla Umbra, and I'm a Brattleboro resident and a parent.
Really? And you have rabbit ears
now.
On TV.
I'm not familiar with the merging of the school district per se, but as a PTO parent, I am familiar with the struggles of PTO fundraising and allocating funds for things like winter sports, field trips, after school programs, STEM programs. So maybe not spending the entire surplus that we have, but maybe allocating a good chunk of it to the 3 schools that we have specifically for those things. I think it will ease up PTO, to gain a healthy, funding tactic over the next couple of years.
Go ahead and finish your statement.
So yeah, that was just a thought that I had, because I know that winter sports, a couple of years ago put us.
Yeah. But just in terms of winter sports, I know we put it into the budget for next year. That if so long as the budget passes, the winter sports is in the budget.
Oak Grove doesn't have an allocation for next year in the winter sports line item.
I'm pretty sure they do.
Yeah.
All 3 schools.
All 3 schools put it in. We could double check with Jerry, but it was mentioned that all 3 schools at a previous meeting that we did put winter sports in for FY20 into our budget.
Okay, thank you. That's, I don't know if helpful is the right word, but we certainly got a lot of ideas and a lot of questions.
Very helpful ideas.
And this is something that the question came up at town meeting, at our budget presentation, and in several other forums. So this is, and Andy, I agree that it should be a much broader process, but in Brattleboro, you advertise as much as you can, and the people that come get to talk about it. So thank you for coming and participating. We're going to be under new business, the administrative retirement benefit. We're going to table that until the next meeting. Request for the entrance, we dealt with. Potential statement for support of the Vernon waiver request. This is a request that the supervisory union, not supervisory district, has made to the State Board of Education. The structure of the Wyndham Southeast Supervisory Union after the merger will be the Wyndham Southeast School District, which is the 4 towns that will merge, will be 1 member, and Vernon Town School District will be the 2nd member. And the current legislation for supervisory unions gives 3 representatives, as you know, as you've been to the SU meetings, 3 representatives to each district. That doesn't make a lot of sense, given the practical, on-the-ground nature of that supervisory union. So the supervisory union has, or the secretary of, the staff attorney for the State Board of Education has advised the state board to grant a waiver to the statutorily required SU board composition, and which is the law saying how it's supposed to be, the 3 members each, and authorize the Wyndham Southeast Supervisory Union to consist of 5 members, 1 member appointed from the board of Vernon School District, and 4 members appointed from the board of the Wyndham Southeast School District, with 1 member residing in each of the 4 towns in the Unified Union School District, the Wyndham Southeast School District. So what I would ask is for a statement of support for the staff attorney's recommendation, and that we communicate the Brattleboro Town School District's support for that recommendation to the members of the State Board of Ed.
So moved.
Moved and seconded? That was easy.
Can I ask a question?
Yep.
Oh, okay. I thought I had to wait till then.
No, go ahead.
So I was at the meeting where they kind of discussed, or Vernon had suggested that they change the representation. I'm confused though at like what this even means. So I know the Vernon would still be involved in the high school, meaning they could send their kids. So I guess I'm wondering, what does this board have, what are they doing?
It's kind of almost like, it's almost like a side-by-side. Because we will have the 4 towns and the schools, and then there's Vernon. But towns cannot exist without, superintendent. They need to, get the special ed, busing, they need to have, that. And it makes sense, obviously logistically, to have it with an entity that's next door to them than it is, sending them off to Marlboro or something else and having them aligned with that. So but they need to have representation. You need to have a board with them so that they can come to a board and discuss with the other towns what they need, have meetings with the superintendent, and this is very, not
So
all
they wouldn't be
encompassing.
coming to the district?
No, there will be separate meetings. It's almost like a finance committee. We have, there's finance committee, there's a representative from each board, and we get together and we go over budgets and things like that. That's kind of what this new board will equate to. That's kind of what we discussed at the last finance, that it would be very similar to what already exists as a finance, just because it has all the towns and we have 1 representative from each board. But they'll just be, it will be more all-encompassing what they're doing. It might be, what they're going to have to deal with will be more of what the SU board deals with now.
Well, it is the SU board that we're talking
Yes, it is, but it's not going to be labeled.
It isn't?
The SU board will be this.
This is, we're talking about the SU.
Yes, but yes, it'll be a little
It'll be
different.
the same,
Yes.
but the board will still be charged with governing the same things, even though
Yes.
there's fewer people in it.
Yes.
It's going to govern the employees that are employed by the supervisory union, not the schools, which is the central offices, superintendent, the special ed, and the diversity, Office of Diversity, Equity, and Social Justice. Those are the employees of the supervisory union. And so there's a budget that pays for those employees and their salaries and all of the stuff they need to do their jobs. And that budget is governed by this board that's going to be 5 people.
And they'll probably be in charge of, if anything comes up in terms of transportation, if we have to do a new contract with that would go to that board first to discuss, because they're all, each town would be included in that. Yes.
So it'd be almost the whole board of, there's only 8 members right now on the
Correct,
board.
yes.
Five
Yes.
and whatever.
Half the board plus a Vernon person.
Yes.
Okay.
It's not a board that's going to meet a lot.
Yeah.
Right, okay. So we have a motion to communicate to the members of the State Board of Education our support for the State Board Staff Attorney's recommendation to waive the statutorily required SU board composition. And that's so. Is that what you have, Kelsey? Okay, great.
She's so good.
Further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Good. We're moving right through them now. Now we have a warranty deed to transfer Crowell Park from the Brattleboro Town School District. A conveyance, and the action is to move to approve the warranty deed conveying Crowell Park to the town of Brattleboro.
I move that we convey the deed.
Second.
Can I ask you, does this have the language in it that we discussed about prioritizing the needs of the Brattleboro Town schools?
It better.
That's what I just wanted to make sure that we talk about that before we vote. And I think, Mark, you weren't here at the meeting where we did all this. Do you have anything you want to add about it?
Well, just that the Crowell lot is essentially an extension of our playground, and we utilize that quite often, and especially in the fall and spring months. So we would love to continue
Yeah, so I think
to use it in that way.
That kind of stuff is why we had asked for this language to be in it about prioritizing their needs first over any other.
The legal notice to warn this says the premises will remain public property with the ability of the schools to have priority use of the premises for outdoor school purposes during normal school hours. So that's the protection we asked for. So yes.
Thank you.
So, thank you. Excellent question. I'm reassured because it's not on the first page. So,
I knew it might be too long for me to just say, read the whole thing, so that's why I just asked. Is that because that was the only thing that I could?
Yeah, why read it? Just sign it. So, further discussion? No? All in favor of conveying the property to the town, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, that is done as well. And next is report from the Brattleboro Music Center Sub-Committee, Andy and Robin.
I prepared a report on this. I should have brought more copies, but would you like
Why don't you give it to
Kelsey, a copy of this to assist with your note-taking?
Yeah, thank you.
Make your job easier. Let's make a report and jump onto it. At a board meeting in, I guess that was in early April, there was a community concern expressed about supervision, contact between Brattleboro students and people, community members, thank you, at the BMC, where we have an overlapping of after-school programs and Brattleboro Music Center programs. And those concerns...
I'm sorry, I just want to give one correction. We don't have any after-school programs at the BMC.
Yeah, but there's an...
We have after-school programs at the schools, and then some of those students also participate unrelatedly to the school district in some children's music programming.
But it's an overlap because of transportation, where members of the BMC actually transport some students who participate in the after-school program to a program at the BMC. It clearly came out of this meeting that that's a separate program, and parents need to sign. It's a separate sign-up, and I think it'll become clear when I read this what happened. It's a unique kind of program. It would be sort of like if another organization did a program within our school and then provided transportation for some of those students to move to their site, and there's a kind of a flow there, and that's what I was calling an overlap. We attended a meeting on Monday, April 15th at the central office, and Robin Morgan and I were there representing the board. Lyle Holliday was there, and there were 4 representatives of the Brattleboro Music Center. It was a very productive meeting. We shared and reviewed current policies of both the Brattleboro Music Center and the Brattleboro Town Schools regarding background checks, fingerprinting of staff, of teachers who work directly with children. I think this is a statement that I put in here and ran it by both Lyle and Robin, I think, I hope, speak up if you don't agree with this, but the Brattleboro Music Center has done due diligence with their relevant policies. It was clear as a bell that they have thought through this and that they actually have a more advanced articulated policy than some of our other after-school partners in the town. I think it's also safe to say from that meeting that there's no programming that takes place that brings children from our schools into direct contact with non-background checked employees. The BMC has gone above and beyond in making sure that the people that run their programs are background checked.
I also want to add, they also don't have any direct contact with anyone but the BMC background checked employees, because that was what the concern was about.
Yeah. So the BMC really responded to all the concerns that were brought up at that public meeting. And I think it's important to make it really clear that some of the concerns that were raised were completely addressed by our partner at the Brattleboro Music Center. One outgrowth of that meeting was that it gave an opportunity to review the after-school programming between Brattleboro Town Schools and our other community partners. And I don't feel the need to name them, there's quite a few of them. And Lyle is reviewing, our superintendent, some of those policies, and there are discrepancies between them. But the Brattleboro Music Center is really a good model, and the idea now is to review and align policies from these other community partners, and the Brattleboro Music Center policies are actually a kind of a, what do you call it, benchmark, a bit of a model for how to prepare that. So if anyone would like to see my notes, I'll just pass them, available.
Okay.
So Kelsey has a copy, so. Anything else you want to add, Robin, from that meeting?
No, I think that sums it up pretty well.
It was a good meeting of the minds about that.
Excellent. I invited the parent that was the community member that was concerned about, that raised the issue. I mentioned that we would be reporting about it. She wasn't able to come, but she'll watch the video. Actually, I'll send her a note and tell her it's a couple hours in. So I'll let her watch the whole thing. Great. Any public comment? Or any comments?
Public members here.
Nobody knows. Like C-SPAN, that's like the Congress. There's nobody there. Any other, okay, on to the almost last item. Discussion of more inclusive seating for visitors. This, I think. Emily,
So I actually did, so I did some research on this.
Yes, exactly.
And actually contacted the head of the school boards to see what do other districts do in regard to ensuring that the public has good seating, good access, and feels that we're like a trusting, comforting community. And it seems that every single school district does it just like this. So there are no results from that. I guess if anybody else has comment, I'm going to bring it up. So I feel satisfied, at least I looked it up. I would love to say that like this seems good, but maybe some other locations when we pick them, when people are off in the corner, maybe we consider what we're really going to do in those cases. But otherwise, it's just, I don't know if anybody else shares the concern.
I think your big concern is EES in that big room.
Yeah, that's really my
and maybe what we can do, because we have the big table, maybe we could get some chairs, and do more of a horseshoe and not have people on that one side, and then we're kind of looking out.
Pillars are what
Yes, I know the pillars we're not going to be able to get rid of the pillars, but if we become a horseshoe and have chairs so that, people can see us, do it some way, just do it somehow that way. But
I also
unfortunately,
think there's kind of
we do the room.
an ability to like adapt to the situation. For tonight, when we had a lot of people who showed up and wanted to be speaking in the meeting, you kind of have to have more of like an audience and then a people up here, because we couldn't be like, why don't you guys all come sit with us? But now, at this situation, we could just be like, would you like to join us at the table when there's one person, which is the usual way. Sadly, it is. Usually it's just one person who's here. So I feel like if we're at EES and there's like 1 or 2 people who have attended the meeting, there's no reason why we couldn't just like be like, why don't you sit down at that end and be a part of the conversation. If it's like the room is full of like 20 people, then obviously that wouldn't be possible.
I like that. I think it's gonna, you know, our standard operating procedure kind of reflects what the audience needs.
And I think there's not at Green Street, the audience is a little bit far away. Well, again, I think we can look at each setting when we're there. And
I think we've invited people to sit at the table before when there've just been another, 1 or 2 people, we've always invited them up to sit at the table, so.
Yeah. It seems like just EES when we go, I guess we're not there for a little while though.
No, next year. Well, who knows? Next year.
Yeah. Okay, well.
We'll be there in the summer, but
Yeah.
probably just, yes. Andy?
I think in terms of making the public feel welcome, the seating is one aspect, but I think time. I know that many people, I've had the experience in the past of coming to a school board meeting to address a certain issue and basically having a 90-minute wait to participate. And having meetings at 5 o'clock for a population, many of whom have children, and I don't know what the right solution. I know we've made a huge step forward by recognizing visitors at the beginning and giving people a chance to make a contribution. I don't know how much control you have as chair over the changing of the agenda. We had a large group of people here. I think that it was advertised that that topic would come up about 5:30, and I think it was well after 6 before we got to that. And I think that that issue probably has more to do with people feeling heard and welcomed than the arrangement of the seating, or at least it's another important aspect of it. And when we see a large group of people here for a particular topic, I sometimes wonder if we should change the agenda to accommodate people, many of whom are watching their watches because they have a sitter or a neighbor with their kids and they would like to make the contribution, and it gets uncomfortable. So
a couple things. The agenda was thrown off by 20 minutes by the executive session.
Exactly.
So it wasn't that much off, but that was something that came up that really needed to be dealt with because the superintendent was going to leave. But
And because we wanted to leave early from this meeting.
Yes. It was a tricky
Because
meeting.
usually we do that at the last thing, but.
Yeah.
But
We
that
also offered childcare for meetings this year, which is something new.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we offered it for a few meetings, and then nobody came and utilized it, so I didn't continue arranging it. But I think that actually, what I said a minute ago, and that is what I think we should really put more energy towards, is not how do we accommodate people when they're at the meeting, but how do we get people to come to the meetings? And I would really welcome everyone's creative thoughts on how to kind of get the word out and get people excited about participating in this more. I think especially as we move towards being a merged district, it's going to be more vital than ever to really get the voices of the community at these meetings. So I think that's something we could all put on the next agenda, and we can all kind of think of, brainstorm about what could we do to really include people in a way that made them show up at these meetings.
I just want to point out that this is a continuing question that's been.
I know, I keep asking it and not answering it, so that's
and there's not really a simple answer, but one of the things that's happened is that we have, for the past several years, we've done more presentations of things like that little video, or the schools presenting their programs, or the early language learning. I'm not sure who was here for that when they came, the conversation we had about the behavior programs. Having a topic that people are interested in, but then advertising it. And I think that we haven't really broken through with the way to promote these things. And I think if we wind up merging, one of the things that should probably go in the budget is somebody to help figure that out, that public participation part. Because we can keep trying, but we know what we're doing. So,
Yeah,
you know,
I mean,
we
I
might
feel like
get
so
lucky.
far, we've really tried offering childcare, but not too much other than that was a specific reach out generally to be increasing participation at the meetings. Sometimes when there's a specific thing that came up, you're right, I or other people would send out, principals would tell their PTOs, hey, we're gonna be talking about this thing. But when, I feel like we should have a more regular structure around that. Like, you know, the select board has a lot more people that show up to their meetings, and people just kind of, I feel like people have their finger on the pulse with that more. And I'd like to figure out how can we get people really paying attention to be like, ooh, what are they gonna talk about this week? I'm gonna show up and say my thing, you know?
Well, I do think if you have if you become a merge board, I think you will there will probably be a lot of people there at the beginning.
Yeah, but I still feel like if I look at who do I see at the meetings where there is public people showing up, you know, the one, that was a really interesting example, the most recent one, because the PTO sort of organized a participation in the meeting. And so a lot of people from the Putney PTO parent community showed up at that, but nobody from any of the other towns did. And that's the kind of thing that I think like we need more kind of like feelers going through into the school community that gets people awareness raised about this. Because I like when I've been doing these petitions, for instance, twice in the past few months, asking everybody at school pickup, hey, sign my thing. They're like, now what is this? I mean, I'm not joking. People don't have their attention on this right now. And when you have little kids going to grade school, your attention is already 95% full. So we have like 5% to work with, and to like, how do we break through to that and let people know this is important and we really want to know what you think and what you need? Because I would hate to have a situation where there's a lot of community voice that aren't the stakeholders of the people with their kids in these schools. And that's what I'm kind of thinking about as we get ready to go to the merge board. Like when we have these public meetings where everyone's voting on the budget and people come, there's some people who are very engaged in this, but I don't feel like I see a lot of parents of grade school kids in that group. And that's what I feel like we really need to work towards.
Hopefully with the leadership councils.
Exactly, yeah.
That's
the hope. That's the plan.
you know, with talking at that, then you can start, then they can, you know, really involve more parents that way and get people to get to the meetings.
Yeah, but I think that I worry about a little bit because I know that at sometimes they have trouble, even like at Academy, sometimes they have trouble getting enough people to be even in the PTO. And that's less of a commitment than the leadership council. So part of it is like letting people know how important this is and how much your voice can shape it will impact. Do we have a robust leadership council even at these 3 or 4 schools? Well, you already have your own council.
Well, but we have the same struggles. We have the same, even though we had a great meeting, we have the same struggles. Because young families with young children don't want to come back out at night. And so I think we have to think outside of the box.
Yeah.
Maybe we do something electronically. We might have, you know, Skype meetings or breakfast meetings, or because even though you offer childcare, which we are champions at, I understand that you set up childcare and nobody came because it's so difficult to come back out.
Yeah. I didn't bring my kids to it. You know, I could have, but I was like, no, that will be a disaster. I'm not going to bring a 2-year-old at bedtime to sit in childcare with people she doesn't know. I mean, it's important to create that access, but it doesn't solve the problem for everybody.
This is on our, well, go ahead, Mark.
I think we also have 3 really healthy schools that are doing a really good job, and we have lots of satisfied parents.
Yes.
And if you're satisfied and you trust your administration, you don't need to go out on 5 o'clock on a Wednesday night.
Our biggest crowds come up when, I remember when there was a move at one point many years ago to take band out of the daily schedule and put it after school.
Lots of people.
We had a mob. So there is a way to get people here.
Yeah.
We don't want to
Propose
have to
something
do
outrageous.
This
We'll
is
just put it on the agenda. Tape
It's
off
on our
that.
well, this is on our agenda because it is an ongoing question, an ongoing
Public
issue.
engagement.
And I think there probably are there probably is a body of knowledge about how to do this successfully that we can at least encourage the merge board to look into. If not, we can look into it ourselves. Just one other point, this is more historical. The reason that we start at 5 is because the principals typically stay at school till around 5, and for them to go home and grab a toast pop or something and then come back would really be kind of bad. So we start at 5 and try to, what's those things you put in the toaster and they pop up?
Pop-Tarts?
Pop-Tarts, thank you, yeah. You grab a Pop-Tart for dinner. I've never had one, so
I used to think that 5 o'clock was crazy because when you have children, this is like when people are getting out of work and
But the
struggling
idea,
for dinner.
It's hard for the
homework,
public,
all
but
this
it's
kind of-
easier.
But on the other hand, if there could be a system, and maybe it gets back to that issue that Emily was bringing up earlier about having a kind of thematic board meeting where it's less reportage and more visioning, participation, goal setting, and have people sign up by the week before, and then have food and childcare and include the people
This
that
is,
come
I
in.
would just say again, this is on our next agenda, so let's do it then instead of tonight,
Yes.
if we could.
Yeah.
Great, okay. Anything else? We have an executive session. We talk about getting people to come. We have 3 things left over from tonight. The VSBA Code of Ethics, which is a little bit late. Administrative retirement benefit, and continue the fund balance conversation.
We also have the academy school that John said to hold over that we need an executive session on.
That's
Student
yeah,
placement.
I have that.
Okay.
That's
okay.
item C on it.
Anything else that we want to try and include next week?
Wait,
Not next week.
Next 2 weeks, sorry. Today's the 8th, so
I know we're off on
the 20 whatever.
So, and that's joint meeting with
22nd.
policy council.
Yes.
That's the annual joint meeting.
Is that that's what's next time? That's not in June?
No, I think,
Well, Lyle says the next meeting is the same night as the first merged board.
Right.
Could that be true? Yes.
It is true, yes.
And she's wondering if we want to move to academy school, because then Brattleboro can start and then have the merged board.
Now, another question related to that is the administrative report said that the merged board meeting started at 6, and when I believe when we set it up, if you recall, we set it up for 7 because we knew we were going to be meeting that same.
We'll have to
Yeah, let's
So
ask
we're going to
if
have
we
to
can
straighten
ask
that
that
out.
question 7,
Yep.
especially if we're hearing from.
Because I don't have that in my. I know
So
I
the
don't have that in my calendar.
EES was tabled, well, I had it that we moved it down to June 5th.
June 5th,
Yeah,
And I
our
asked her-
first and only
Yes.
meeting in June.
and then I asked her if we could switch it because I'm actually not available that day.
Well, that would be pretty important. Okay, so we may wind up tabling everything we just put on this agenda and doing the meeting with the policy council. So I'm going to ask if you would get in touch with Lyle and just to confirm that, and I'll do that. I'll take care of that. We'll work on an agenda that makes it possible.
And you're going to also ask her if they can move the merged board meeting to 7 instead of 6.
Yeah, well, I put it in my calendar, I said we need to have it at 7 because we have a school board meeting that night. And that's what I thought we put in the calendar, everybody put in the calendars, but it didn't, that's not what, it's in my calendar, but that doesn't mean anything if nobody else's.
Right.
Said, yeah, good idea, Dave, I think I'll put that in there.
I don't have any.
So I'll check with her on that. Anything else to come before the board?
I move we adjourn.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we are adjourned at, whatever time it is.